The United States of America is the world's foremost economic and military power. It has the third largest population in the world. And its economy produces around one quarter of the world's wealth, $22.76 trillion in 2021, $68,310 per capita, one of the highest in the developed world. The US is home to many entrepreneurs and has created many iconic products which are highly sought after around the world, for example, Apple and Facebook. The US also provides the greatest amount of international aid. USA contribution over $50 billion, 37% of total aid. In addition, private American companies and foundations also donate billions of dollars in aid every year. USAID is involved in 87 missions around the world, has 3,500 partnerships. Military influence. Militarily, the US remains the world's only superpower. USA spends 3.8% of its GDP. More than any other country, $738 billion from a world total of $2,000 plus billion. Over one-third, 36% of the total world's defense spending is by the USA. The US has the largest naval fleet in the world. The US carrier fleet dwarfs every other country in the world, particularly in terms of in size and technological hardware. The scale of the US Navy allows it to have a military presence anywhere in the world. Cultural influence. The USA's cultural influence extends across the world. For example, over 2 billion people speak some English in the world today, with the majority speaking an Americanized version of the language. US TV programs, films, video games, and music have a large domestic market of more than 300 million customers, in addition to their influence on the rest of the world. Involvement in international organizations. The USA is a leading member of a number of important international organizations. G8 and G20 Group. Groups of the countries with the largest economies. Opportunity for the US and other group members to develop closer economic ties to expand trade. The G20 has similar aims to the G8 but includes an additional 12 members. The United Nations. The USA is a founding member of the United Nations (UN). USA is the permanent member on the UN Security Council, alongside the UK, China, Russia, and France. USA is the biggest single contributor to the UN budget, 27% of the UN peacekeeping budget. The US hosts the UN headquarters in New York and contributes the most of any single country to UN programs, but in most years the US has failed to pay its contribution in full. As a permanent member of the UN Security Council, the US has the opportunity to veto any Security Council proposal put forward. Since the Security Council is the part of the UN responsible for peacemaking and peacekeeping as well as international sanctions, this gives the USA a very influential role. The US has at times found decision-making within the UN Security Council frustrating or time-consuming. Russia and China are also permanent members and often use their veto to block USA proposals. On various occasions, the US has ignored the UN and its decision-making procedures. For example, the US did not seek UN approval when it invaded Iraq in 2003. The US has also consistently backed Israeli actions financially and militarily despite widespread UN and international condemnation. Like many other countries, the US will do what it believes is in its best interests regardless of what the UN or the rest of the world think. However, on most occasions, the US does work within the decision-making processes of the UN Security Council. Leading a response to the crisis in Libya in 2011. More recently, the USA's diplomatic efforts have led to resolving issues in Syria. The North Atlantic Treaty Organization, founded in 1949. NATO is the largest and most powerful military alliance in the world. Made up of 28 nation members of equal standing, where each country has one vote in decision-making. The USA is the dominant player within NATO. It contributes far more troops, resources and finances than any other single member of the alliance, more than any other country. In recent years, USA has been focusing its attention more towards Asia and the Far East. US leadership within NATO remains very important. For example, in terms of the NATO involvement in Libya in 2011 and in war of Afghanistan. However, the USA also needs NATO as it allows the USA to confront difficult and diverse threats to its security. As part of NATO, the USA is stronger. Challenges to US influence. The re-emergence of Russia as a military power, and its annexation of Crimea has radically changed the US-Russian relationship. After years of increased cooperation, e.g. through the NATO-Russia Council and with Russian membership of the G8 group, the US was of the view that Russia was no longer the threat to European peace and security. It once was. Russian President Vladimir Putin's actions in supporting the anti-government rebels in Ukraine have resulted in extensive US and European economic sanctions being imposed on Russia. The US has become frustrated with Russia over Syria. The ongoing civil war in Syria has led to the loss of thousands of lives while hundreds of thousands have been displaced. Russia's steadfast support for the Syrian government by means of its UN Security Council veto has meant the US has been unable to gain UN approval for action. Challenges to US influence. China. The US has also been challenged by the increasing importance of China in recent years. Although China is not a match militarily to the US, it is an economic superpower and China's economy becomes larger than the USA. China is also using its newfound wealth to increase its influence in Asia and particularly in Africa. By way of response, the USA has increased aid and trade with many African countries to ensure US influence is maintained within the continent. China has also entered the space race. In 2016, Beijing overtook New York as the billionaire capital of the world.